Picture this. It's 1988. You're walking through Paris Charles de Gaulle Airport, rushing to catch a flight. You pass a quiet middle-aged man sitting on a red plastic bench. He's got a trolley piled with luggage, reading a book. A week later, you fly back through the same terminal, and you see him again. Same man, same bench, same trolley. A year later, he's still there. A decade later, he's still there. This isn't fiction. This is the unbelievable true story of Mehran Karimi Nasseri, the man who lived inside an airport terminal for 19 years. 19 years. And yes, this is the real-life story that inspired the Tom Hanks movie, The Terminal. But the truth is far more bizarre and far more heartbreaking than anything Hollywood could dream up. So, how did one man become a permanent resident of an airport? How did he eat? Where did he sleep? And what happened when he finally walked out those automatic doors, almost 2 decades later? Stick around, because this story will make you question everything you know about home, identity, and the cracks people can fall through in our modern world. Our story begins not in an airport, but in Iran, where Mehran was born in 1945. His early life was relatively normal. He studied in England in the 1970s, but when he returned to Iran, he was allegedly imprisoned and then expelled for protesting against the Shah. He became a political refugee, bouncing between European countries. The United Kingdom, the Netherlands, Germany, they all turned him away. Eventually, Belgium granted him official refugee status. This should have been the end of his troubles. It was just the beginning. In 1988, Mehran decided to travel to England, believing his mother was British. He flew from Paris to London, but when he arrived, British immigration officials found he didn't have the proper papers. The story gets murky here. Mehran claimed his briefcase containing his refugee documents was stolen on the train to the airport in Paris. Without them, the British authorities had no choice but to put him on the very next flight back to, you guessed it, Paris Charles de Gaulle. And that's where the bureaucratic nightmare truly began. When he landed back in Paris, French police tried to arrest him for entering the country illegally, but he had no papers to deport him with. He had no country of origin to send him back to, since he'd been expelled from Iran. He was, in a word, stateless, a ghost in the system. The French authorities couldn't legally let him into France, but they also couldn't legally kick him out. So, they did the only thing they could. They told him he had to stay inside the international transit zone of Terminal 1. He was free to go anywhere in the world, as long as he didn't step foot into France. But with no passport and no country willing to accept him, anywhere was nowhere. So, Mehran Karimi Nasseri, who now preferred to be called Sir Alfred Mehran, set up camp. His new home was a small section of the departures area. His bedroom was a red plastic bench. His living room was the space around it. His life neatly organized on a luggage trolley. For 19 years, this tiny corner of Terminal 1 was his entire world. At first, he must have believed it would only be a few days. A week, maybe. But days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and months into years. He developed a strict routine. He'd wake up early, around 5:30 a.m., and wash in the public restroom before the morning rush of travelers. He'd spend his days reading books, studying economics, and meticulously writing in his diary, which would eventually grow to be thousands of pages long. He listened to the radio, always keeping up with world news. Travelers would come and go, a constantly shifting sea of faces. Most didn't even notice him, but some did. The airport staff, in particular, became his unlikely community. The workers at the airport McDonald's would bring him breakfast every morning, coffee, and a croissant. Doctors at the airport clinic would check on his health. The local post office held his mail. He became a fixture, a quiet, polite, well-dressed man who just lived there. They called him Lord Alfred. He was their strange, silent neighbor. As his story slowly trickled out to the media, Mehran became an international celebrity of sorts. Journalists from around the globe came to interview him. Travelers who had heard his story sought him out, offering him money, which he often refused. Women sent him letters, some even proposing marriage. He was a puzzle, a human curiosity, living in the most public of private spaces. Meanwhile, a French human rights lawyer named Christian Bouget took on his case. The legal battle was maddeningly complex. In 1995, Belgian authorities finally agreed to reissue his refugee papers, but there was a catch. They required him to present himself in person in Belgium. But to do that, he'd need permission to enter France to travel to Belgium, the very thing he was unallowed to do. It was a perfect, soul-crushing catch-22. Finally, in 1999, after a decade of legal wrangling, a breakthrough. The Belgian government relented and agreed to mail his papers to him at the airport. He was finally free. The lawyer brought him the documents, expecting a moment of pure joy, of relief. But what happened next was shocking. Mehran looked at the papers, which listed his nationality as Iranian and his name as Mehran Karimi Nasseri. He refused to sign them. He calmly stated, "I am not Mehran Karimi Nasseri. I am Sir Alfred Mehran. I am not Iranian." Years of living in this legal and physical limbo had taken a profound toll. The identity he had created for himself, Sir Alfred, had become more real to him than the man he used to be. He had spent so long fighting the system that the fight itself had become his identity. The airport was no longer his prison. It had become his home. The outside world was now the alien territory. He was terrified of leaving, and so, he stayed. The years continued to roll by. 2000, 2002, 2004. Around this time, Hollywood came calling. Steven Spielberg bought the rights to his life story for $250,000, which was deposited into an airport bank account Mehran couldn't access. The result was the 2004 film, The Terminal, starring Tom Hanks. The movie was a light, romantic comedy, a story of a resourceful man finding love and community while stuck in an airport. The reality for Mehran was far lonelier, far more psychologically complex. He reportedly saw the movie, with one airport worker saying, "He's not interested. He's a man who has lived." The film is a fiction. He continued his life on the red bench. Travelers would see him and whisper, "That's the guy from the movie." He was a living landmark. But in July 2006, after 19 years, his life in the terminal came to an abrupt end. He was hospitalized for an illness. When he was discharged, he couldn't go back. The French Red Cross took him in, and for the first time in nearly 2 decades, Mehran Karimi Nasseri slept in a real bed, in a real room, in a homeless shelter in Paris. But he was never the same. He was a man out of time, a man institutionalized by an airport terminal. The world outside was too big, too loud, too complicated. He had lost his place, his purpose. And now, we come to the final, tragic chapter of this story. In late 2022, a few weeks before his death, Mehran Karimi Nasseri, now an old man in his late 70s, returned to Charles de Gaulle Airport. No one is quite sure why. Perhaps he was looking for the only home he had ever really known. Perhaps he felt his story needed to end where it began. On November 12, 2022, Mehran Karimi Nasseri died of a heart attack. He was found, with several thousand euros in his possession, in Terminal 2F, not far from the red bench, in Terminal 1 that had been his home for 19 years. His story is a heartbreaking testament to the failures of bureaucracy. But it's also a profound look at the human need for identity, for community, and for a place to call home even, if that place is a bench in the middle of a noisy airport. What do you think? Could you have survived what he went through? Let me know in the comments below. If you found this story as incredible as I did, please hit that like button and subscribe for more unbelievable true stories every single week. Thanks for watching.